Good evening, hello, and thanks for the introduction. I'm not sure what, I never met Barry or Norman, I'm not sure what they'd make of this. I'm sure they would all, both enjoy the argument we're probably going to have after I finish speaking. We're 2 years on from the Arab Spring, and in Egypt the Muslim Brotherhood is in power. The Occupy protests exist more as a hashtag than an actual physical occupation of space. Pussy Riot are in jail. In Syria, 200 people a day are being killed by Assad's armed forces. It would be easy to say, as a result of that, the thing that started 2 years ago is over, but it's not. I'm clearer now about what that thing is, what to call it. I'll call it quite clearly a revolution. In some ways, it's a revolution, and it is global. That parallels the revolutions of the past, but in many other ways, it's unique. And it's the uniqueness that I focused on in the book, and the uniqueness, what is new, that I want to carry on talking about tonight. Above all, at present, the relationship between the physical and the mental, between the political and the cultural within this revolution seem inverted. There is a changing consciousness, the intuition, quite widely held, that something big is possible, that a great change in the world's priorities is within people's grasp. But the physical, the political reality is full of disappointment. The Egyptian economy is currently being privatized in the direction of a new elite to replace the old Mubarak elite. Salafism, radical Islam, reactionary radical Islam, is rife in Tunisia, in Libya. Not a single one of the anti-austerity movements in Europe has so far stopped austerity. And in Greece, as I found out and reported for Newsnight last year, Golden Dawn, an outright fascist party, has achieved 14% in the polls. That's 14% with knuckle dusters and pogroms, compared to 18% it took Marine Le Pen 20 years to achieve in a Chanel suit. That is not a great situation. The essence of the situation, however, positively, is the collapse of trust in the old regimes across the world, combined with the inability to go on living the pre-crisis lifestyle, and combined with the sudden awakening, I argue, of new priorities among individual human beings. And tonight I'm going to try and revisit that argument and revisit the world of what the problems that the movements that have sprung up across the world have started to hit. But before we do that, I would like to remind you and myself of the action, indeed of the euphoria, so that we remember what we are talking about. The audio on this is from a mobile phone, as is the video. Well, this is the Castle Amiel Bridge on the 28th of January in Cairo, the so-called Day of Rage. There's the masses coming from Zamalek, which is plebeian area. There's the security forces going in. And what we think is going to happen is what happens all the time throughout history to protest movements. This goes on for some time, the flow it forward, and the riot police go in. These white plumes of tear gas. People are quite determinedly resisting. There are casualties, but then this starts happening. They start driving full pelt at the crowd with the riot vans and spraying. And no look. These are the first frames of this video where I think we begin to see what was different about 2011. Because while to you that might look like a bunch of Muslims praying, if you look closely, very few of these people here have beards, have the beards of Islamists. There are probably more beards in this room than there are in that line of people praying. These are just ordinary people who are just Democrats, lawyers, civil servants, factory workers, and they decide demonstrably to meet the violence with non-violence. And in a way that, of course, challenges the Mubarak regime for the moral high ground. Now, if we run it on a bit, there's only so much. Can you see a guy there putting his hand over the front of the cannon to stop it spraying? Look, he's actually tearing it off. A man is shot in the face with a tear gas canister. Later, that turns up on something called YouTube. And we see what's happened to his face by evening. But you're on a loser, really, when you're fighting the riot police. And how many of you, probably some Labour movement activists in this room, people internationally, have been in that situation where finally the riot police clear everything, and as the crowd retreats into Zamalek and the riot spreads out into the back streets of that particular area, it looks like it should be game over. But you see, there it is. You can hardly see it now. They've driven them back, and that's probably should be the end of it. But now watch. The voices you can hear are the people on the balcony filming this on a mobile telephone. The police are in control of the bridge. It's the main bridge that leads Tahrir Square. It's down here, basically, down here on the other side of the thing. But look what's happening. The remainder of the rioters have managed to find some traffic bollards. And indeed, this front riot van, this water cannon, is in a very inadvised position because of what's about to happen to it. And if I scroll it forward, now there you are. We missed the crucial bit, but somehow it's now minus its crew. And if you're an experienced rioter, I'm sure some of you are, you'll now start to notice something demographically interesting about the guys who will be behind it. Those of you who know the story will know that these are football supporters. They've been sent down there to clear out the, quotes, gays and foreign agents. And instead, they managed to do this. You can see they're rolling a kiosk as a secondary thing. And behind them, in a couple of minutes' time, there is the mass of the ordinary people who've been waiting to come to Tahrir. Now, this is a crucial moment of the Egyptian Revolution, the Day of Rage, 28th of January 2011. There's some great on-the-ground video of people inside this singing and dancing around, the football supporters, etc. Now, we can have the lights back up. That is, to me, I'll just have to swap over now to PowerPoint. Sorry about this. That scene was a signal. It was a signal to people across the globe and to rulers across the globe that if you systematically loot your own people and you repress their aspirations and you allow the creation of a rich elite totally divorced from the lives of ordinary people, and if you can't offer young people, even football supporters, any hope through the economic system, and if you're not prepared to shoot them with bullets, that is going to happen to you. It is going to happen to you in Beijing, in Moscow, in London, in Athens, in Washington. That is the new reality of the world you live in. Because those people who did, standing up in front of the tear gas and water cannon, were ordinary people, not activists, not at all radicals. And what my book is about, and what this talk is about, is what is the nature of this, the thing that can happen to the rulers and tyrants of the world? What is the nature of the unrest that swept the globe, and where does it lead? Well, in February 2011, not long after that, I came up with a blog entitled 20 Reasons Why It's Kicking Off Everywhere. In reality, it's reducible to 3 reasons. One is economics. The collapse of the neoliberal economic model, compounded then for the past 3 years by the persistent attempts to go on making that model work, to ram the square peg into the round hole, turning a slump into what now looks like a 10-year recession depression rather, that we might be only halfway through. Secondly, a revolution in technology that has made horizontal networks the default mode of activism and protest, which has destroyed the traditional means of disseminating ideology that persisted for 200 years in the era of industrial capitalism, I argue, that's made social media an essentially mimetic form of communication, an irreversible norm. Thirdly, a change in human consciousness, the emergence of what Manuel Castells, the most quoted sociologist in the world, calls the networked individual. The expansion of the space and power of individual human beings, and a change in the way they think, a change in the rate of change of ideas, an expansion of available knowledge, a massive and almost unrecordable revolution in culture. If I'm right, then what we're seeing there and on our TV screens every night is not the Arab Spring, the Russian Spring, the Maple Spring, the protests in Quebec, Occupy, the Indignados. If I'm right, what we're seeing is that, a human spring. We're seeing something that reminds us, long after the historians reduced it to battles and constitutions, why they called 1848 the springtime of nations. And why Hegel, the only bearded 18th century revolutionary, I'm going to, not much of a revolutionary quote tonight, but why Hegel, writing in the aftermath of the First French Revolution, wrote this: "The spirit of man has broken with the old order of things and with the old ways of thinking, and is in the mind to let them all sink into the depths of the past and to set about its own transformation." I think the moment we're going through is as big as that. So to explain it, let's start with the economics. Proposition 1. Neoliberalism is finished. As an economic model, it died on the 15th of September when Lehman went bust. Alan Greenspan's words a month later in the House committee hearing, prophetic. "I found a flaw," he said. "A flaw in the model that I perceived as a critical functioning structure that defines how the world works, so to speak." Senator Waxman challenged him. "What, your ideology was wrong?" "Yes, my ideology was wrong. That's precisely the reason," says Greenspan. "I was shocked because I've been going for 40 years or more with very considerable evidence that it was working exceptionally well." Neoliberalism told them that the market was self-regulating, that the self-interest of a participant in any deal was a better regulator than a regulator, because nobody would knowingly let the deal go wrong. You didn't need the state, you didn't need regulation, you didn't need anything other than the free market, which would self-regulate. It didn't. It blew up. Neoliberalism created a dominant finance sector in the West and told that sector to go enrich itself, and that